Imagine traveling halfway across the world just to have your last name butchered in the mouths of strangers. Imagine moving to another country, leaving the only home you've ever known and the only people you've ever learned to love. Just to come and develop a distaste for your culture, your tradition, and yourself. I was born in Nigeria, and my family came to Canada in 2010. My parents came yearning for success and opportunities. They came for jobs. They came for education. My displacement across continents is like the uprooting of a plant. I started off as a seed, planted into rich, fertile soil embedded with culture. There I grew my roots, anchored by my friends, family, and sense of community. See, but you can only grow so much in an environment that's limited in opportunities, one that's corrupt. So one day, we had to make the move. We had to come to Canada, an environment where the temperature was colder and the people were too. A ground that only wanted to accommodate a certain species of plant. And I was not that plant. How do you blossom in a place that wants you to wilt? How do you grow in a place that wants you to die? See, the truth is that most immigrant families come to Canada hoping to better themselves and their children. But they end up working dead-end, temporary, stopgap jobs, trying to provide for their children's and make ends meet. But they're too late on the take. Too late do they realize that because of unchangeable circumstances, such as their race, the odds are stacked against them. They're going to have to work twice as hard to fit into a new community. They're going to have to work twice as hard to get the same opportunities afforded to those born here. My family first came to Canada in 2010, and we lived in Nova Scotia. There it was easier to get a citizenship. In the first few weeks of school, for the first time in my life, I found that it was hard to make friends. I looked and sounded different from everybody else in the school. And it was at that time that I remember our English homeroom teacher made us do an assignment where we had to analyze the lyrics of the song, "Don't Laugh at Me," with lyrics such as, "My family's new to this country. You make fun of how I dress and what I like to eat." I found that it mirrored my experience in Canada thus far. He was trying to help me. I realize only now. He was trying to show how difficult it is to fit in when you're different. When you already have a pre-constructed identity, a way people are ready to perceive you. It's hard. I remember going over to a friend's house to finish up a project. We're eating dinner, chicken and salad. When it gets to the time to eat the chicken, I put down my forks and my knives, and at the table, I just start using my hands. At first, everybody's staring at me like, What's going on? That's kind of odd. Brutish, one could even say. Until I explained to them that in my culture, we don't eat chicken using cutlery. The message from this story is that most times, we don't know where others are coming from. If it was so easy for me to be misunderstood at the dining table, how much easier could it be for me to be misunderstood and misrepresented by society as a whole? There's an importance in grasping that you can't capture the essence of a person with a label. Whenever you look at someone, you're never seeing them in their entirety. You're only glancing at a mere page in a chapter in the entire book of their lives. See, immigrants often have a hard time in Canada, despite making a large percent of the population, because they're misunderstood, misrepresented. Sometimes you hear less harmful stereotypes like, because he's Asian, he must be good at math. They become more harmful, like because he's black, he must be violent, a thug. Because he's Somalian, he's probably stupid, a terrorist. In my first few weeks of school, I was bullied. Like most forms of oppression, it wasn't physical. I wasn't getting shoved into a locker, but I would find myself eating lunch alone almost every day. Whenever it was time for a group exercise, no group would choose me. The teacher had to put me into an already made group where they made it clear they didn't want me there. And sometimes I think about all the other individuals who, because of their differences, are made to stand at the outer circle of society. Victims of unconscious biases in a society that renders foreign as uncomfortable. I hear labels about race every day. When someone says, I didn't know you could do that because you were this race. Or the most common one I always hear, you're the whitest black person I know. I'm sure we've all heard it before. What does that mean? As if to say that our behavior, our personality, is predetermined by our race. God forbid that who we can become, our identity, is chained to the amount of melanin in our skin. And with these labels comes a fear of being assigned one of them. I realized I had this fear on this one Sunday afternoon. We're coming back from church after a big Thanksgiving celebration, and I was in full African attire. And when I say African attire, I mean there were literally lines printed on my shirt. My mom told me to get out of the car, help her get some groceries. I didn't move. I made a huge fit and I told her, Mom, I'm not getting out of this car. She looked at me, pained and confused. Why? I didn't answer then, but I knew why. I was ashamed. I didn't want to be seen as an African boy. I thought I would be looked down upon. And that's when I realized, ever since I came to this country, I've developed a distaste for my favorite foods my tradition, my culture, because I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be normal. And I know countless other immigrants have had to do the same. What I'm saying here goes further than putting yourself in other people's shoes. You already are in their shoes. In a sense, we're all immigrants. We all have our own unique story, our history, pages written with experiences in the entire books of our life. So how do we move on? How do we change? How do we become better? It starts with having an openness to meet each person as having their own identity, as being their own self. You can't look at them and apply the same stereotypes you apply to everybody else. My grade 9 teacher told me, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. In the same way, freeing ourselves from all assumptions allows the people we meet to stay true to themselves. When you think someone can only behave in a certain way, you put them in a box. You trap them. You make them unable to express themselves. You stop them from being who they are. Isn't that what we all want? To be ourselves? Whenever someone makes an assumption about us, they say, "You're stupid," or "You're lazy." We say, "You don't know me. You don't know my story. You don't know where I come from." Yet we're just as quick to put labels on others, to make attributions off the top of our head. Maybe think twice before avoiding Tyrone because you think he's violent. You don't know that he's never even been in a fight in his life. Reconsider your thoughts on the kid who acts out in class. You don't know that his mom comes home tired from work, yelling at him every night. Think twice about that weird kid who studies so hard in school. You don't know that his failure means beatings and his family depends on his education. You just don't know. If you listen to just the first 2 minutes of my talk and then you zoned out, it's time to listen in again. There's something you all have to hear. We don't know where others are coming from, and we don't know where they're going. But the least we can do is acknowledge that everyone has their own story.